Welcome to the stream. My name is Lee, and we are doing the thing we usually do. As you know, those of you who watch my streams regularly know that I am always running late on the streams. Yep. Okay. So, streams are always a little bit... Okay. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. This one. Okay, so today is a very special day, as you know. It's Saturday, and I don't always stream on Saturdays, so when I do, it's generally a special request. Today's special request is not the usual special request, which is frickin' Warhammer Fantasy Lore. I do Warhammer Fantasy Lore often on Saturdays, simply because I have people in my chat who really like Warhammer Fantasy Lore, and therefore frequently request it. No, today's is going to be... NPC slash, it is improvisation of your NPCs, and generally how to improvise. Okay. Alright, so that's an exciting thing. We did this, we did that. Yes. So, the first thing you gotta do is, wait for me to get my my stuff together, because I'm trying to, get myself into a good place, get some viewers, but also tell everyone I'm going live, and then have everyone who is alive come show up, and that's a silly way to explain this. So I always put myself on live before I start a little bit. For those of you who are new and might not know this. Also, I'm probably going to put the video up. I do put videos up on YouTube afterward. So, you know, it's going to be up there. Anyone else who might want... Where should I... Yeah, we're going to go here. NPC creation. All right, and we will, in 3 minutes, begin the seminar. Seminar is a good word, actually. So, yeah, in 3 minutes, we're going to begin the seminar. I have up as my teaching tool that thing, which I'm... So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with my work, wow, that's such a... I'm not a... I stream, that's my thing. I do write also, but that's a completely different thing. And this is RPGs. So, you know, we do all of this, Okay. So. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Let's do this. Alright. So we have... Alright. First thing I'm gonna do is set this properly. It is... So, creation of NPCs. There we go. All right. Okay. Hopefully that'll be a good, and of course I'm going to save it as a word. No, I'm going to save it first. We're going to do this ahead of time. I'm going to say, creation of NPCs. There we go. So that way I'll have it as a Word document, because I can just send it to people if anyone ever is like, well, how do I do NPCs? Secondly, you know, it's cool. We're gonna do one more, I think, before we get started, because okay. Beautiful. Okay. We're gonna start. I have one viewer, so hi, friend. Hopefully other people join us. If not, no worries. Saturday streams, you know how it is. They're always a hit or miss. And, anyhow, we are going to do this and do that. So, for those of you who don't know, NPC stands for non-player character. And if you're DMing, which I know at least some of you occasionally DM, then you're going to want NPCs. Your players will be like, hey, they'll want to talk to people. They'll say, hey, there's a random person. I'm going to stop someone random on the street. And also, even if they don't, you want NPCs. It makes your, it's fun to do as a DM. Personally, I like NPCs. B, it makes the world feel richer and more like a thing for your character. B, and it gets your players excited about the game. NPCs are just awesome. You need NPCs. Like, there's no... I don't think you could run a game without NPCs. Honestly, like, it would just be impossible. That's not to say I've never tried. So, if any of you out there have ever tried to run a game with no NPCs and have actually made it work, let me know. You can also gloss over your NPCs and kind of summarize their speech instead of role-playing directly as them. Perfectly okay to summarize. Especially if they are, all the important plot details. Like, that might be a good thing to do with summaries. Don't feel guilty about it. All right, so that's I'm putting the rules as rule. I'm just putting them 1, 2. Honestly, that would probably be like that would not be number 1. But I you know what? We'll put it as we're doing a little math here. Okay. So yeah. So start with okay, start with their purpose in the story / community. If your players talk to someone random, sorry. Apparently my microphone is maxing out, so you know what I should do? Let me see if we can just do this. Is that a little better? Yeah, that's a little better. Okay. I'm turning down the gain a little bit. I think that will help with not banging it out too much. Let me know if the sound sounds good, weird, bad, you know. I realize that we don't have a lot of live viewers right now, so getting input on that isn't helping much, but I think that should be good. Okay, so hey! Oh, wow. Okay, the gain is turned way down. I'm counting on this sounding good in terms of how much. I'm counting on the red as being not something I want to hit, but I don't, okay, that's a train in the background. I don't know if you can hear it. Not worth it. Okay, so despite the distraction from sound, we need, blah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, so when you're creating an NPC, start with their name, their role or purpose in the community. That's a good start. Name is not necessarily important. That you might think that, no, that's not how you start creating anything with a character. That's just not how it works. Names are not, I mean, also appearance is worth noting, but not, I mean, the first thing you would notice if you were, say, out and about in, I don't know, existence, running around. So, certain players think that's important. I personally have no idea what any of my NPCs look like, or not quite a lot. So, but when you're on the fly, okay, what's their purpose? Now, their purpose could be as simple as, I don't know how to explain the process as well as I can, but hopefully it... yeah, so... sometimes the purpose in the story, actually, a good chunk of the time, the purpose in the story is just to be cute and to make the word, I don't know about cute, if that's quite the right word, but to make the players like them, but to kind of give a vibe of being in the world. So that is a, when the players want to talk to somebody, they're gonna, I don't know, stop random people or, you know, anytime you go into a place, there are thousands of people just around, and that is a something you should remember as both a world builder and as a DM, is that there are just people living in your world, random people who, I don't know, you know, exist, and so it gives a feeling of richness if your players end up talking to a lot of different random people. Now, obviously they're not going to spend their whole adventure talking to random people. I shouldn't say not necessarily. That can be fun for the players. And definitely War and Peace with Finger Puppets, as my one of my good friends puts it, where you're playing multiple NPCs and they're, say, arguing or in front of the characters. That can be interesting and it can be fun for the players to hear, but just not too much of that, you know? And, you know, but, so yeah, sometimes the purpose in the story is very loose, and, you know, it's even a good idea to just throw in NPCs who exist just to exist, because it would be logical, for them to exist in that particular place. Okay, so that's the purpose in the story community. So figure out what that is. If they have a more direct narrative purpose, say their exposition or hints, make sure, you don't have to make sure your players talk to them, but have a plan if your players don't talk to them. For example, if they have to deliver important exposition and your players ignore them, you either have two choices. You can say, well, you live without the exposition. You didn't talk to the people. You didn't learn the stuff. Whatever. Or you can find someone else will tell them if they talk to someone else. This is, you know, it depends on how important it is for your players to know this particular detail. Or if it's just kind of bonus information that they can understand the world and what's going on without it. Because sometimes people are just dumb, and PCs are not an exception. So if people can go through the world without knowing what's going on, PCs can do the same. It depends how much fun your players will have with that. Depends on their play type, but honestly, don't worry about it. So, there's also a subset of that, there's an overall vibe, if you want your players to understand things about the world, like, this guy is, the king is evil and everyone hates him, and then you would have people complaining about the king, or having them complaining about the king in a very specific way. Sometimes the players, or mention things that are happening in the world that your players might want to interact with or know about. Like, I don't do a whole lot of plot things for stories. My theory is not plot, but it's more, you know, if they're running around, you know, they're looking for monsters to fight or problems to solve, or that's what players do as PCs. Adventurers, tend to go looking for that sort of thing. That's the whole kind of the premise of the game, is that these people are the kind of people who go out looking for trouble to solve and fix and do stuff with. Now, some players will turn that on its head and just want to go buy goats and stuff. That's fine. As a DM, kind of sucks, but you then have to figure out, do you just want to let your players do that and have goat farmer simulator, or do you want to run the adventure where, you know, the king is, try to get them to more involved in, like, stuff like overthrowing the king or fixing the local dragon problem? And if so, how can you make it their problem? If they're not going to go solve it anyway, just for the good of solving it, how are you gonna yes. Another big one is quest givers are also a big thing. Nope. Quest givers are a thing. Sometimes, you know, you want, the players are like, you know that they're looking for something, so you say, well, okay, they'll pay you to go and fix the thing with the rats, or they're looking for people to, exposition. Okay. Quest givers are a thing. So, and, you know, quest givers are a thing. Sometimes quest givers are just ordinary people who happen to know who will pay for dragon slaying. You know what I mean? Um, they are not always... Quest givers sound like old wizened, old people living in the forest, being all mysterious. Most are just ordinary people who have problems with, I don't know, things eating their livestock, or breaking into their house, or, because you live in a world with these crazy monsters. That's probably what people have problems with, ghost-slaying beasts, because, or they need body parts from some monster for a manufacturing or magical shenanigans. But yeah, don't feel compelled to put them into the mold. Okay, so exposition is a big thing. So purpose in the community is more like, okay, so you don't know exactly what they look like, but rough age, the three things are, there are four, these are the four big ones. Clothing style, not even if distinctive, just, and a few key details. For example, someone comes to take the horses. They're going toward the inn and they're being approached by a stable. Okay, so a girl of about 10 with pigtails and a blue ribbon, and blue ribbons comes up. Here, I'm here to take your horses. You know what I mean? That's it. Distinctive voices are nice, but not necessarily. Like, you can get away without them if you're not good at distinctive voices. Don't worry too much about it. Do the best you can. Yeah, do the best you can. Distinctive voices are, they're more important if you have multiple NPCs, and then, okay, but a few key details, just, like, blue ribbons in the hair, or she's blonde. Okay, now you have, that's enough. Or, give them a little bit of a scar on their wrist. Something that the players can latch onto. You don't need a full description, and honestly, it doesn't matter much. Just kind of a vague outline. Race as in species. Both as in species and if they're a human, darker or lighter skin. That's something that people would notice about. That's one of the first things people notice about strangers when you meet them is... because of the way our society is built. But just like, a halfling, mention that they're human. Okay. Small human girl of about 10, pigtails with blue ribbon. Okay, that's enough description. And listen, if you want to not do gender for one reason or another, or you want to have if you want to have non-binary characters, which I would suggest doing frequently, because that's just me though. I try to throw in at least 2 NBs and I throw in proportionally way more NBs than probably anyone would meet, but because I like to remind my players that non-binary people exist, because a lot of people tend to forget, because it makes up, less than half of 1% of the population. So it's kind of very small, and no one, and it's just nice to be remembered. So I try to make up for that. You don't have to, but mix up pronoun use, and you can either conscientiously avoid gender or say they're androgynous looking. Just throw it out there. That is a big thing. I do add in trans characters occasionally, but, just say they're androgynous looking. If you have a trans character who you really want your players to pick up that they're trans, either because of the plot point or just as like me, where you're trying to remind have your players constantly remember that trans people are a thing in your world and in our world, and because of reasons. A good way to do that is I don't know. Mention something, I don't know, like a particularly thick jawline in a woman, and you don't have to make it obvious. But the best way to do that is to have someone like stumble over the pronouns, or back before he transitioned, he used to have bigger breasts, like something like that, and they're like, oh, something that would because how do I explain this? In a community where trans people exist and are allowed to exist freely, stealth wouldn't be a thing if they've been living in the town their whole lives. Of course, people would have known them before transition, so of course people would make subtle comments like that without thinking about it, because it's not a big deal that they're trans, because there's not this weird transphobic violence that, you know what I mean? At least that's how I would construct my world. But or you can just make all your characters cis, and it's not even that untrue. It's just a thing. That was a sidetrack. We got very sidetracked by that. And we still don't have any other. Do we? Oh, we have 2 viewers now. So I would encourage anyone coming by to say hi in the chat. And if you have any questions, like, what about this? I'm kind of how to create NPCs, just a quick guide. Also, note, there's a difference between, here, I'm going to put this. Random civilians created on the fly. Okay. This is, if you have, for example, your characters are going to go to a specific place, and they're going to meet a specific person, then you would put more thought into the NPCs. For example, if they're going to meet the king is an NPC, but the king is an NPC as you'd probably have that thought out ahead of time. Or, the evil wizard they're going to fight, or, those are the kind of NPCs you would think out ahead of time. This is, they're going through town and they want to talk, they're like, we're going to go find a blacksmith. Okay, well, do they just know, they're going to go want to talk to the blacksmith? Okay, well, that's why I say purpose and story, quest givers. And then the third one is, service providers. I should probably put that down. C is service. And this can kind of overlap a little bit. For example, service providers as in innkeepers, blacksmiths, etc. Because because the players are going to want to buy things, they're going to want to interact, they're going to want to spend the night in an actual bed, they're going to want to, if you're going to make them track food, they're going to want to buy groceries, they're going to want, they're going to, and it's an interesting experience for the players, at least to, have them interact with shopkeepers. That also, it is very possible that there's more than one of these. For example, if you go to talk to, the local grocer, he's going to say, oh, if you happen to know this, that he's also going to want, oh, well, I haven't spoken with the farmer who usually getting squashed, so we're out. Could you go and see what's up with them? And then it turns out they're being held hostage by werewolves, because that's the kind of thing that happens in these worlds. So it's very possible that these things quest givers can be, more than one is possible. Also, so often more than one purpose. Also, side note, be wary of who want to recruit. try not to let them recruit people. Because if they have NPCs traveling with the party, it's hard to find a balance between them actually being the NPCs actually being useful and not dead weight. And it's balance between them and them outshining the players in terms of usefulness. I generally try to keep them. You don't want them to turn into DNPC. I mean, DMPC, which means like a full-on player character. Now, I would say NPCs should have a full range of abilities, and but the question is, are your players okay with that? Make sure, because it's, and also how to bounce role play. Like, don't, because it's a balance of role play of making them believable people with real arcs, but also not taking away from the character's chance to role play. You know what I mean? The PCs, because they're the ones who you're really pushing for them to role play. That's what you want to do as a DM. Your goal is to let them shine. That's your goal, is to let your players shine. Let their character, let them role play. So that is that is something. Also, fellow travelers. Okay, that's a big thing. Fellow travelers. Okay. Oh yes. Beware of parties trying to recruit. I know this is kind of slapdash, but I'm trying to think. How would I create an NPC? Because oftentimes when you're running the game, your players will suddenly need to talk to somebody, and you're gonna have to come up on the fly. And I was trying to run a seminar on that, and I don't have a mental checklist. Like, I kind of just, it's kind of intuitive for me, but I want to share that with you. So I'm trying to, let's see. Fellow travelers. Are, important. Well, so maybe not important to mention, but just if the players are traveling along well-traveled roads, mentioning them, mention the fact that there are other people traveling along those roads makes it feel really more lived in. Also, because travel tends to, be boring, or it can drag and be boring a little bit. So, random encounters are a big way to do that. And some of the random encounters, okay, yeah, you can have random encounters like have to fight a bear, for example. Okay, or at least get the bear to go away instead of eat you, or not panic and try to kill you, because bears are, a thing. Or so you can have random encounters like that. But what can be more interesting, and I like to roll for random encounters. Along the road, just you notice a couple of people go by, and if you roll for a random encounter, I usually roll a d12. If they get 11 or 12, then there's an encounter with something that's not, regular old ordinary. Sometimes, like, one time was a deserter from the local, there's a war going on in my world, and, someone was deserting the army and had freaked out, and a bunch of local watch people were trying to flush him out and bring him in for a trial, and he was just not having it. And there's, that is a thing that it's just random subplots that you can just throw in as, oh yeah, the world is existing, and so that's a one you can do. But those are good for random encounters. If there is a known danger, like, for example, if the players are told don't travel this road at night, and they travel the road at night anyway, you have to figure out, well, what's the big thing that threatens people that travel the road at night, and is it, a threat to your players? Because here's the thing. For example, there's giant spiders in parts of my world who kind of just, they lay their net, webs out at night, and they often take the roads, and they catch, whatever comes in their web, and if the person's traveling down the road at night, they often get caught in those webs. And they generally are inactive during the day, so it's not too much of a worry if traveling during the day, but they actively hunt at night, so you have to be careful. Basically, I made that to try to make it more dangerous for players to hunt at night. But here's the travel at night. Thing is, once the players got to, 5th level, there are 2 ways you can do that. A, make it not a big deal anymore, or B, jack up buff up the spiders. Because even a regular old giant spider will be devastating for an average commoner who is just trying to grow whatever, crops and bring them into town to sell, and they don't want to deal with giant spiders all the time, so they just don't travel at night. Make it safe like that. Others, problems, how to explain this? Anyway, that's just a world building tip, for random encounters on the road. I'm trying to focus on NPCs, but as a DM, all those kind of blur together, like how to make your players have fun, basically how to create social environments where your players can just do stuff. That's kind of the vibe. Yeah. Just pop your voice up or down a few octaves, give it a little gruff. Hi! Good evening. It is not evening yet, it's only 2:40. I'm writing a how-to guide on how to create random civilians on the fly as NPCs. That is my thingamabob. So purpose in the story, purpose in the story and purpose in the community are 2 different things, and I will get to purpose in the community. We're just doing an NPC creation. That was one of the suggestions Blue Box made, and I kind of did want to do one. So we're doing a bunch of suggestions for topics. One of them was creating NPCs. How to make a hateable villain. The art of XP. Oh yeah. Getting the players comfortable with RP. How to make a hateable villain. We're doing general NPCs instead of hateable villains. Oh man. Is that why no one watches the stream? Is because they're super laggy all the time, or is it a problem on your end? I don't want you to have shitty internet, but at the same time, I also, if it's a problem on your end, that means other people could watch it and it wouldn't be a big deal, except clearly it isn't. So, there's that. Dang. If that's a problem, then I'm going to have to figure out how to solve it, and I'm not good at figuring out how to solve it, except getting a better computer. And my internet is, I already got the best internet we got, and I have the extender right here in my room, so it's not like I can do much on that front, other than switch to a different provider, but, options are limited, and Optimum's pretty good, and I didn't even fight the Black Dragon, which was kind of a bummer. I was really in, a not good headspace at work, so I waited for a while after I got off till I finally plugged into the game, and I also got out late, so later than, ideal. But I think waiting, then I missed the very end of the fight. Like, I couldn't, you know, you guys managed to take it down like that, pretty much. But hopefully you're coming back Friday, because that would be fun. I would like to have you back. I have to go to the dentist on Friday, and teeth. Get my tooth fixed. But that's a whole other story. Okay. Please don't lag. Stream, please don't lag. I was gonna, my thing was on the okay. That's the key, appearance details. You know, blue ribbon in the hair, like, just, you know, like a missing tooth, or a scar. Maybe they have red hair. The one with the freckles. You know, just some little things. And you don't want to describe the clothes excessively. You just want to say, you know, a basic, any kind of inference they'd make from the clothing. Would be the best way to do it. Okay, so that's rolling the story. Okay, so I'm gonna separate rolling the story, rolling the community. Okay, so that would be a big one. So, how to explain? How do I explain role in the community? It starts with their job. And B, why they are where they are. Now, if they're going to a blacksmith, for example, the blacksmith is at the blacksmith shop because that's his job, is to, or her, actually, because their job is to make metal, so they're at work when the players see them. So, you know, and it's what hours do they keep, you know, what are their store hours, what's their vibe? That's to make money. Okay. If they're at if they go to a farm and the farmers are out in the field, that makes sense. Well, his ideas were like how to do XP, were like DM training seminar videos, basically. How to make hateable villains, how to do XP, which I just do milestone leveling because I don't know how to XP properly. Like, I do want to reward my players for creative roleplay and, you know, stuff like that, but game pacing with the right mix of combat, RP, puzzles, and traps. My games tend to be NP heavy. That was it. So he just gave me a bunch of those, and I'm like, okay, well, how about we do creating NPCs? Because I'm good at that. World building, how to world build as a DM, like the practicals of it, is a big thing, and I think, you know, can be helpful. So we're doing how to create NPCs. For now. It's just, you know, a vibe. And I thought it was a good one, and so we're doing how to come up with NPCs on the fly. Okay, why are they where they are? If they're out drinking at the pub, why do they do that every night, or is it a special occasion? Is it just kind of like a thing they do for fun? The W in DM. I'm not the W in... It doesn't even... I just try to do the best I can with is what I got. How to create random civilians on the fly. What you need to know about NPCs, and just to throw... Okay, to be fair, throwing them together is not Ah, yes, the world building. I know how to build worlds. I can build 100 worlds for you. I remember I was at the hospital when I was, sick, and one of the I think orderly is the wrong word, but I'm not sure what the like a CNA, certified nurse assistant, like med techs, that he was, and he came. We were talking, and he said, "Oh well." I talked about how I was a writer, and he said, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but plot is really hard. World building's easy." He's like, "No, no, no. World building's the hardest part. Plot can't be that hard." And so I said, "All right, bet." And I built an entire world. I built like 6 planets and different social groups and old conflicts. Um, yes, exactly. You always need names. I am the person who names things for my friend, who's worse at naming things than I am, and I'm bad at naming things. But yeah, it always helps to have other people name things, because then you have so many just. Ooh. But yeah, it is always like, I can't name things. He doesn't even name his own characters half the time, and I'm like, but names. You gotta name characters. But yes, the world building is a something easy for me to do. So I created this entire. I don't even remember. It was actually really interesting, and I could be fun. But I just handed it over to him and said, "Do something with that." And he's like, "I don't know what I could do with plot." I'm like, "You see, I gave you tons of hooks, and you just ignored all of them, and like you can't plot. This is." And then I let him keep the world just as for him. I don't know. And then I created another for a fellow patient, because he's like, "Ooh, like you could just create worlds for him." I'm like, "Yeah, you want one?" He's like, "Kinda." And I'm like, "Bet," because I was bored out of my skull. Anyway, creating things. Oh yes, back to the thing. Why they are where they are is a big one. Family structure. So do they have a wife, husband, non-binary spouse, kids? If so, how many? Rough age range. For example, someone who has 5 kids under the age of 6 is different than someone who has 2 teenage kids. That's a very much a different vibe, and it's worth knowing at least a little bit about that. Like, are they still living with their parents? Are they living with a romantic partner? Do they have kids? That's the big single, parents or no parents. Parents are on their own. And then kids. That's unless you're gonna unless you're going to the players are not going to start interrogating the usually they may or may not try to seduce them. So if you have a player who tries to seduce everyone, you have 2 options. Try to stop them at every turn, or B, give them people to try and seduce. That is to say, make a world in which casual hookups are a thing under certain circumstances, and so let them try. You know what I mean? And that's going to be a thing. That is going to be a thing. Twimeline even flirted with people. And did the dragon reciprocate? That's an important question. Because sometimes dragons are in on it. The thing about dragons is, they're way bigger. So, the physical aspects of that kind of relationship can get interesting and ugly, and, like, you could take acid damage, or even if they're in human form. B, they might still eat your friends. Just being, they might still eat your friends. C, they might try to double-cross you and eat you afterward, because, wait, it sort of worked? They might try to double-cross you and eat you afterward. Or D, hey, there you go. Sorta. Double-crossing you afterward. D, even then, well, you're in a relationship with the dragon. What do you do? Like, they're still gonna want to eat, people, maybe. Are they gonna change their evil ways? If not, are you comfortable with becoming less than moral yourself? What about your parents? What about their parents? Is that, because that's gonna be a thing. Is one of you gonna end up pregnant? If so, at what point, does that get complicated, Ew, that's a thought. That is a thought. Oh. There's just, there is complication. You have to know what you're getting into, basically. And, it's not as simple as, okay, seduce the dragon and now the dragon's not going to eat us. Well, yeah, but now you're in a relationship with the dragon and you have to keep that up, or, break up with the dragon who's going to eat you because you're now their ex, and, it's a whole thing. Okay. I am in favor of consequences for players doing stupid stuff. Not letting them do it, but, okay, sorry, that's fair enough. That is fair enough. Oh, right, I'm back to creating NPC. Knowing if they have kids or not, because if they have kids, they'll probably maybe mention their kids or refrain from swearing as much because they don't want to swear around the kids, so they get used to not swearing, or they watch the language a little bit, It's just worth knowing that sort of thing. Name is, okay, so that's 4 is name. That's the hardest one. A tip that, yeah, no, that's fair. Stalling for time is only useful if your party can prep. If they're all melee or ranged, if their only option is fight or don't fight, then stalling for time doesn't help them at all. On the other hand, if they can, say, prepare something, or can, say, set up a delayed fireball that has a couple rounds to go with, or, preparing a delayed fireball, for example, or, getting into, sneaking around to flank, or stuff like that. That can be helpful, but if they're all just frontal assaults, then buying time is no good. But yes, we're discussing dragon fighting tactics, but I was supposed to be discussing, NPC creation, an important note for this is, so what they would notice, Yeah, no, that's a thought. If you manage to talk to the dragon before they start fighting, it gets an extra round. I mean, extra round can be handy. That's a thought. I'm sorry Jasper wasn't there to provide extra stabs. I was offering people bandages afterward because I was, well, actually, though, if you turn your rogue invisible, they automatically get sneak attack, right? So, if you need sneak attack and get extra damage, depending on the rules for sneak attack. Yeah, Toot Toot ran rope trick, that's just mean. Not mean, but like, for your throwing that out there for your party. But anyway, back to the important part of I'm trying to run a seminar on how to create NPCs, and it's not bad that you're distracting me. It's just okay, so about your PCs. This one's important. Okay, maybe I'm going to separate this out. So if, for example, tab E dot, yes. Okay. This one's important. So name is, for example, race-specific, yeah, okay, he would have had a decent chance of dying, but he has a fair amount of HP. He has like 50, and anyway, he's not a squishy wizard. Not like the other, he's actually a fighter. He doesn't die that easily. Which I'm, consider where they are as in, list of generic names. Not generic names, thematically appropriate names. Can be a handy tool. Do not forget. Write down, if you name the NPC, write down their names. Especially, because your players will remember. Okay, fair. But, just have to not be in the immediate, field of the breath weapon, which is, if we had a whole round of the bard trying to talk to the Majiggy Whatsit, then you can easily get out of the way of the breath weapon, kind of sneak around the side, right? That's how you do. Isn't that the... Anyway, dragon fighting is not... We're doing a whole thing on NPC creation. Write down their name. If you have the players talk to an NPC, especially if the player... Okay, here, especially if the players like them. How do you make the players like them? Okay, the bold. Because if the players think they're fun, or, if the players think they're fun or something, they're gonna come back and want to talk to these people again, and then you're gonna have to remember their name. That's the thing, is, perfectly okay to summarize, this is miscellaneous. Okay, names, local culture. For example, Johan is a common name in Hitherland, but Pierre would be a more common name in Hyreth because of how the cultural thing is. So if they have other culture specific, yes, okay. So this is a pretty good solid one. Because sometimes NPCs no, he's not a bard in the sense of the official sense. He's just a bard as in he plays music. That's his vibe. Bard is a word that describes musicians who just musician and not just ones who use their magic to cast spells and inspire others, etc., etc. That is an important distinction. Like, okay, so this is hi. That is true as well. A minstrel and a bard. That is fair. Bards tend to be poetic and writing in nature, but minstrels tend to be more musical. Oh yeah, he expected a bard, and he's like, no, it's just a jaunty tune. It just makes them feel good about themselves. It's up to the DM if it does anything. Playing a jaunty tune. True. That's true as well. It depends on what you want to do. Or you could argue the minstrel just plays to play, and a bard is the one who does magic or mechanical inspiration with their music/art. That could be. Also, hi, Breckland. Welcome to our seminar on how to create NPCs on the fly, if needed. I have a whole list, and they never will be missed. Sorry, I have a friend who does Gilbert and Sullivan operas, so I tend to get that every time I say list. Anyway, so the first thing you do is, what's their purpose in the story? Are they, innkeep / providing some sort of service? Do they have a quest? Are they there for exposition? Or just to make the world feel more lived in? Also, fellow travelers. Having random encounters with fellow travelers. Oh, yes, be wary of a party trying to recruit. Okay, so if your party wants to take NPCs with them into combat, you gotta be careful and not just let them automatically get away with that, because then it overpowers them, and also it's a really hard balance as a DM trying to make a balance between role-playing these NPCs they take along as real characters, as with real lives and arcs and stuff, but also letting your PCs shine in the roleplay. Because it can be interesting to have someone to bounce the roleplay off of, but you don't want the roleplay to be just you talking among the, as an NPC. You want the roleplay to be the characters as well, or the players as well. That your goal as a DM is to let them shine and make an interesting world for them. That is your play as a DM. And it's also a matter of, A, they're useless in combat, so why, and the players are going to get frustrated with that, and B, making them stronger, and which A, outshines the players, and B, makes the players more dangerous. Now, that's not to say you can't let your players bring tag-along NPCs, especially a healer. But, just try to, be aware of that and say, oh, we'll just grab a healer. No, don't let them get away. If they want to ask if people want to come along, convince them, just be, conscientious that players will try to grab NPCs, and you don't want to just let them completely without thinking it through, because it will be harder for you as a DM, and you have to be willing to take that on. So, on the other hand, if they're trying to recruit all the time, it's frustrating for them if you don't let them do it at least sometimes. So you kind of have to. It's a balancing act between letting it happen and not letting. And it is a delicate when to walk. And having a system in place is key. I do not have a system in place to manage it. I have. Every time they bring someone along, I am basically running them as a complete NPC with their own stats and things. If they get too many people, I'm always a little wary of that. So just, yeah. But fellow travelers on well-paved roads. And then the important information about so an NPC, when you have someone random show up in your game because the players need something, the key things are when you describe them. Ooh, okay. Something worth checking out. Pretty cool. Having systems in place is good. I like running the higher, as actual characters with actual roleplay. It's a lot of roleplay. Ooh, free preview packet. Always fun. But yeah. But the most important thing to talk about an NPC is first, when you describe them, rough age. So kid, middle age, 20s, something like that. Gender, I have a whole, theory on how to, gender is an interesting thing for me personally because of getting mistaken for women every other time. It's annoying, race, as in, both in the sense of species and general skin tone would be helpful, especially if it's different than the vast majority. Okay, it is only important. The NPC's socks are only important if your players are insane and try to steal one single sock from a random NPC because she kept a gold piece in her sock. That's a very reasonable place to keep a gold piece if you don't have pockets. And frankly, if you steal the sock, you took her sock, just some random sock. You don't just knock an NPC out and then rob them blind and then take their sock. That's the only... No, having a party who does that should not be encouraged. And their socks are almost never... Yes, you managed to steal the sock successfully, and no, it wasn't magical. We went over this. Ah, that's a thought. Personal presentation. Here we go. That's a thought. How about this? Gender presentation. That's a good way to put it. I do tend, if I very specifically want the NPC to be in non-binary, I will either conscientiously use gender-neutral word like person, or I will describe them as androgynous looking because, that is a bit of a stereotype, but for someone they briefly meet, it's enough. Clothing style, is just, are they wearing anything fancy? Is there anything worth noting about it, or is it just basic plain working clothes? And usually you have something like a few key appearance details is just something every time you describe an NPC. It's always good to give them something like they have freckles, or she does not wear a magical sock. Sorry, as a little bit of background, I was playing in a game with Sig once, and jamming a game for them, and the party ended up robbing a bunch of patrons of this tavern because, and they rolled really high and got away with it, and they stole the stocking, and it had a very faint magical aura because part of the new manufacturing thing is that they have spinning wheels that run on magic to help make cloth making easier. So it's kind of a... Oh, I mean, they did go and save the Cassie's girl, the girl Cassie hooked up from the evil monster, who was harassing her farm. So, like, they did actually go and save the... they brought Cassie back, they got paid, Cassie being, the Barons, the head of security in the Baronies, one agent, one full-time agent rather than just subcontracted adventurers, is a fighter with intelligence of 20 and a low strength and dexterity score, who figures everything out and then usually gets captured and needs rescuing. But because that's how I tend, that's my go-to plot is, you need to go rescue Cassie and solve the problem that she was trying to solve with the Barony, and then she's figured everything out already. She just needs muscle to... it's a good plot for one-shots, because then the players don't have to figure anything out. Cassie's already figured it all out. They just have to find her. And, you know. But yeah, they were being rather agents of chaosy. And, they stole the sock, and then they kept haranguing me about it. And it's not a magical stocking. It's a regular old stocking that, you know, tans with the stripes and a little bow in it, you know. And it's about a size 8, you know, goes up to the knee. Yes, but you were the one who convinced the bard to play a sleep song and steal everything. You had the rogue who stole everything. Ugh. Sorry. But this was... Her name was Laura, and she had a gold piece in her sock because she was out with her husband. They actually did not take her wedding ring. It wasn't actual gold for her wedding ring. She was married. You see, I remember, this is why I do NPCs. You know, they were like, well... Yeah, no, but you... Yeah, okay. Alright, fair. That was all. The whole party was, you know, on this stupid... Ugh. And you lied to the barkeep, and also... Once you go back to the Blue Wren, you will never be allowed to go back, because they realized that you committed all that. So if you guys ever retake those characters and try to go back to the Blue Wren, they're going to be mad at you. Just saying. But, oh yes, once you name your characters, write down the character's name. Having a handy list of names keeps you from having too many Johans. I name a lot of NPC Johan or Johanna because it's... thematically similar to, culturally similar to Germany, so, you know, they all have those kind of names, so Johann is just a common name, and a lot of the NPCs are named Johann. And they once had a, I know, Johann, who was a human, and, no, Johann was a half-elf. I remember this because, originally, the character was originally played by, John's niece, the first year at Blue Box Con, who took on the, you know, But yes, also something to think about when you have NPCs. What do they notice? What would they notice about the PCs? This is an important note. Since I'm trying to run a little bit of a seminar. It's Saturday. That's true. That's why Johann is such a common name. Like Johann Sebastian Bach. Yeah, because John... I mean, even today, John is a very common name. Jean is in the French tradition. Or Mary, for example. Do you know how many women are named Mary, Marie, Maria, variants on that? Because of Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God. In fact, that is my mother's name and my middle name. So, and I'm keeping it even though it's very feminine because, But yeah, it is it is something. It's not unusual that there are so many Johanns. It's just, you don't want too many NPCs with the same name because it confuses your characters. I mean, your players, who are also PCs, but, it does tend to confuse the players, a little bit. But having a list of extra names can be very handy to prevent that. But what else? A murder mystery. I mean, I'm not opposed to writing a murder mystery. Oh, wow. That is true as well. Mm-hmm. That is true. But if you have PCs who are, say, tieflings, or, because a lot of the players I end up playing with like to play tieflings because, a lot of them are gay, and it is, a thing. But a tiefling, or someone who, has, say, the Outlander background, who specifically is foreign, or, someone who would be noticeable. Especially adventurers tend to be the type of people who are very much, noticeable. Like, they tend to carry nicer weapons and have armor. Like, they might be walking around in plate mail, which is not a thing most people do. So, yes, the NPCs are going to notice this, and B, what's their opinion on that? Or maybe they're not racist, but they might say something, like, there's a tiefling in a temple, and then they'll see that there's a tiefling, no offense, or something like that. They'll have catchy slogans. They'll, these things are unusual, or they'll be kind of trying not to stare at the horns. They do. My PCs at least tend to wander down in battle gear. Like Relin. I have two parties that are running through the same kind of area, roughly the same time period, in the same part of the country. And each of them has an NPC tag along that I let them have, which, but yeah, Relin walks into town in full plate with a rainbow, this gorgeous bird. It's the symbol of, Shalyn, the goddess of art and beauty and love. And he goes into town wearing her symbol in gems on his breastplate because he's a paladin of Shalyn, and that's his thing. But yeah, it does. They also tend to tell him where local gay bars are because I tend to add them into a lot of, not small towns, but any slightly larger town will probably have one because it's my world and I'm decided that's an important thing to have socially, but everyone kind of assumes the Relin is gay because of that, but it is something. But yeah, Yeah, or if the PC has a religious symbol, for example, if it's something that, if it's a faith that the shopkeeper shares, they'll point it out, or they'll mention it, or, it's something you notice about other people, and you might, when you're making conversation, that's something you would note. If the PCs are of a gender they find attractive, they might try to flirt with the PCs. That is a thing. Sometimes they might not. Just little things. Especially if the PCs are highly attractive. I do not wear full battle gear. I wear my work boots and the work jeans I have for work, which are the good ones from LL Bean that are the masculine cut, which are the frickin' men's designed. And, I do tend to try to remember to, if I wear an earring, I wear one earring and I wear it in my right ear because, well, that's something I personally find, I only wear two if I'm presenting as femme, and I usually only do that if I'm trying to have to hold up my ID for something specific, and I mean, sometimes you wear work gear when you go into town. It depends on the day. And if you wear work gear when you go, also when you're going into work. Also, adventurers don't tend to have a lot of, at least PCs don't tend to have a lot of down clothing. They don't ever try to dress down. Hi! Phantom! Welcome! Blue Box suggested that I do, kind of DM tutorial-y type, streams, and because he donated a lot of bits last time, I agreed to do as the to decide the Saturday streams. That's true. If there is a town that has a lot of Marauders and Raiders, that's true. If you go into town and you have weapons visible on you, they're the town guard. I mean, depends on what kind of town guard you have. That's true, but what constitutes regular clothes is what you wear under your armor. Regular clothes, you have pants and a shirt. Well, if you wear armor, you wear something underneath. That's kind of how armor works. You don't wear just your armor, right over your bare skin. You usually wear clothes and then armor, and then, hence I said you wear your clothes under your armor. But, you wear, you start with your regular clothes, then you wear a gambeson, and then a chainmail, and then the plate on top. I think the regular clothes are just, what you wear underneath your armor, and then you take off the armor, and you're not naked. That is true as well. But when your characters go into town, they will have, generally, if they're carrying weapons, the town guard will generally at least, sorry, if there is a town guard, which in Hitherland there are, because it's technically a police state, because I kind of accidentally, I had a player who really wanted to lean into that, and I kind of just accidentally made a feudal police state, with the king and the barons and the, watchmasters, and it ended up as a feudal police state by mistake. And then I kind of leaned into it and was like, well, I guess this is our, this is how this works, now. But, I had an important theory on that. Yeah, if you're, oh, that's something else I should think. Guards. No, well, it's feudal as in the sense that it's the the king and then the barons run each specific barony, and the king had a rule made that the baronies cannot have names as baronies. This was just after unification to try to promote national unity, and it kind of worked. But it is illegal. The baronies do not have names. They just are the barony where the town where the baron lives guards. This is a big one. Yeah, and then you have the kind of like a county, I guess, but they have a baron instead of a count. So, but yeah, they have the baron, and then the baron. Each town has a watchmaster, which is appointed by the baron, who then hires out a town watch to enforce law and order, and basically runs all civil authority. I mean, some of the towns have mayors. Some of the barons will allow for different civil authority that's not the watch, but in a lot of places in the country, yeah, exactly, it's a sheriff. The watchmaster just kind of runs the town, and law and order is 90% discretion. So there's no judge. If you get arrested, for example, there's no judge. Unless you get something like, I think you're legally allowed to demand a trial by the baron, but most people don't. If it's a big crime, you get dragged before the baron to be tried. But for most small stuff, the watchmaster will just keep you in the back of the watch station locked up until they feel like you've served long enough. It's got each barony has one major city where the baron lives, and then there's a watchmaster in that city, and then usually the baron has some sort of fixer who takes on anything local watchmasters can't. Hitherland is my own country that I invented. It's on a continent called Sprintia, and then I invented all the countries around it. There's Hitherland, and then Nementhia which is landlocked. There's Gilnia to the east, to the west, which has a civil war going on. Hitherland and Hyreth, Hitherland and Hyreth both are backing various factions with soldiers helping them out after their most recent war 30 years ago, because they've gone to war multiple times. They're both part of the Napolitan Empire at its height. Now Napolitan Empire it got down to like 3 countries, and then 2 of them broke away at the very south. That's where stuff like oranges comes from. They get shipped north. It's a whole homebrew, setting. In highly settled areas, which I meant to explain how to, important things for NPCs if you're throwing, the city has a high share with appointed representatives. I mean, no, not really. Each small town has a watchmaster. There's the big one in the middle of the village, and then there's all sorts of small towns throughout the area, and each small town is surrounded by farms, who are tied to it slightly, each small town has the watchmasters appointed by the baron, who also appoints one for the baronial seat as well. And then the the baronies have defined borders, and which is the baronies have full defined borders. They just don't have names. And then there's the baronial seat where the baron lives, which is the biggest city in the barony usually, with the exception of something like Hermville, which is, Hermville's a special case because it's in the I mean, it's true. They also do have, land ownership is very, very loose. Common land, if you settle there in the land, you can claim it as your own. Land ownership is actually quite loose, but, which means all the very wealthy, those are very wealthy are those who manufacture and, have land in town. Like, landlords are a thing directly in cities. Once you get outside the city, people just live on the land and kind of own it by right of working it, essentially. Um, and if there's any problems that the local watch can't solve, they send it to whoever the Baron puts in charge of that, which varies barony to barony. And most of them will hire who are called contractors, which are basically just adventurers, to go and fix things, and then we'll pay them from tax money collected by the barony. Certain baronies are known for paying more. Certain ones, for example, Higsteth, the colonel, tends not to hire contractors unless she specifically does not want people to know it's official. But she has her own people, a whole setup of them. So very rarely hires contractors. Although sometimes private citizens or other people will hire contractors for this or that, but they usually can't pay as much as going through the barony. So, oh yeah, absolutely. Certain towns would be, notice that they're contractors, but whenever you, and innkeepers, on the one hand, sudden influence of gear, according to the economy. On the other hand, it means that there's trouble nearby. Adventurers tend to start trouble, such as lying about their purpose to move free rooms and putting the patrons to sleep and robbing them. So towns that have oh yeah, there are different, yeah, absolutely. And certain towns, and also various businesses in town and different people in town might feel differently about adventurers, and how much trouble they cause versus how much money they bring in versus if they're a sign of trouble. Because that might be the first instinct to ask is there some sort of trouble? Like, were you hired as mercenaries? And if so, who hired you and why are you here of all places? Because if someone is hiring mercenaries and they're kicking around in your town, that's a sign that something bad is going to go down. That they expect trouble and violence, and trouble and violence tend to have collateral damage. So it's worth noting that in any given town, there are people who are glad to see them, and there are people who are not. And then, of course, there's also a fun thing you can do with to kind of boost your player's ego. Letters of marque. Yes. Certain baronies will issue... a letter of marque is for pirates, I believe, right? If I remember correctly. Letters of marque would be privateers. That would be on... and Hitherland is, to be fair, landbound, although they do have a navy. They have a navy because one of the players wanted to play a naval... an ex-Navy guy, so I invented them having a navy that sailed the rivers and actually ended up... they have a branch on each of the three main rivers, and then one of the rivers has flows into Gilnia, which meant that particular group ended up backing up troops in that civil war. Actually, though, all three of the rivers flow into... yes. Well, privateers on land, I think reprisal... or bounties, is a thing. I think, if I remember correctly, Congress has remember this from my history class correctly, letters of marque and reprisal, and I think letter of reprisal is the one for land, and letter of marque is for oceans, or I guess for sky ships and stuff, if you have, frequent air combat, or a setting where the sky ships are more open, as opposed to modern planes, which tend to... but if you have something like Zeppelins, where you can kind of be on the deck, and that would make mid-air piracy more of a thing, and therefore having a privateers would be more of a thing. Although, what's a thought? Anyway, but yeah, contractors generally, usually what happens is you go to one of the barons. Each of the baron has someone who's in charge of their, they put in charge of their baron's safety and picking up the slack for anything the local watch can't handle. For example, if there's a dragon, as a very basic example, that the local watch can't fight, they will, the local baron will hire out a contractor to go deal with it. Usually it's not, usually it's stuff, like cults trying to murder people because, you know, and occasionally the watchmaster will hire contractors to, beef up his own, people if, that, it's necessary. But yeah, generally they'll get a contract from a baron, and you can show that as, you'll get a copy of it, and you can, use that as your, thing. And, if you're in, Zentrum, or if you're working in the area around Zentrum, in that barony, you have to have an official badge, from their, what's his name? The guy in Zentrum, he has a name, I think it's Lord von Stell, but it's not, it's one of Baron von Stell's brothers, but not his, like, one of his cousins who, a lot of these guys, that run the, their secondary are cousins of other barons who need the position. But, Lord von Stell, is, in Zentrum, and he, you get a badge, basically, which allows you to, you know, it gives you a certain amount of freedom and ensures a certain amount of cooperation, and then you can come claim bounties, and, if you have, you know, it ensures a certain amount of cooperation, and, of course, but that only applies there. If you're working in one of the other baronies, you know, you have the contract with whatever, which you then, which guarantees your payment, but also, what else does it do? Guarantees your payment, but also doubles as, if you want to kind of work, you know, you kind of say, yes, I have this contract with the baron, kind of, and you, offer you up an air of legitimacy when you're talking, you know, interviewing witnesses or whatnot. But yeah, contractors are sort of like privateers on land, although you can take private contracts, but, if you're not working for the barony, for example, you don't garner the same amount of respect, and the watch, for example, is less likely to work with you or agree to things, or, you know, they can arrest you and stuff if you start asking too many questions of the wrong people. It's a whole delicate dance. Which, you know, of course, when there's cults going around murdering people, a new crusade who go into certain towns and just commit random attacks, and then you've got the other cults who are trying to commit human sacrifices. There's a lot of cults popping up recently because of overarching schemes and reasoning, which is basically what the contractors have to deal with most of the time. But yeah. I did not intend to do an explanation of the Netherlands political landscape. But, you know, this is how this goes. What I meant to do was, to create, how to create a random civilian, which is start with the purpose in the story. Guards are a big one. A rough description, which is age as in adult or like juvenile, younger, older, gender, or like at least a presentation, race, human or otherwise, or, you know, maybe a quick description of skin tone. No, trust me, I get very, very easily derailed, and I used to have a whole little spiel about that. that I got. But yeah, no, I get very easily distracted, and you are not the only one to do. You got Sigyn. Hey, don't the Fae. The whole no. You're trying to. Sorry, you're trying to derail me again with the Fae. That was something that came up a thing. But yes, I do tend to get easily distracted and derailed, which is chill. Like this is how I like my streams to run. Kind of, we stay roughly on topic and get sidetracked into various other shenanigans. Yeah. But yes. Also, don't worry too much about distinctive voices. Oh, and if arguments between the NPCs break out, you have to, after each statement... Oh, family character... I mean, none of the family trees are that important. I mean, freaking... All the characters are siblings, you know? It's not that complicated a family tree. Although they do have an uncle who, has a lot of half-elven kids because of, his whole thing. Right. Well, yes, all the main siblings are named after Ninrils. You got Quartz, who's the littlest, and Amethyst, Jasper, Tourmaline, and Feldspar. Feldspar hasn't been brought in yet. If Jasper dies, I guess we're going with Feldspar. Or I might have to do a NPC who's not from that family, or a PC who's not from that family, because we're already in Greyhawk now, and how many come through the portal from Aird is, you know... Although now I have information on the Elves of Aird, I can figure out where they all fit on that whole setup. Yes, that's fair. Exactly. He didn't... I know, I feel bad about that, but I was in a really bad headspace after work, and I just need, to get myself there mentally before I signed on, and by the time, you know... And also, we worked late because all sorts of things happened, but we were a little behind. But yes. Also, know what your PC's job is. Yeah, which is why we have bandages. I'm sure it was. I'm glad they managed to defeat it. Sounds pretty cool. But yeah, the roles in community. Job, why... That's the big thing with, if you're... Hey, that's what you gotta do with your mandolin. And you were tall enough that the mandolin properly fit you. As opposed to a halfling who played a human-sized mandolin, therefore the scale was off, but, you know. Who is a character that I created for as a pre-gen for one of my games. His name was Rolf. Thomas played him, actually. Yeah. Also, having the, exactly, it would be more like a guitar. Have you ever seen a guitarone? It's kind of like a guitar, but it's big. It's sort of that kind of proportion. If someone having a mandolin play with the cello. That's a thought. You could play it standing up, I guess. Depends on... Now, that is a thought. But yeah, it is a... Yeah. Yes, okay. I'm... That is a thought. That you'd have a cello... Yeah, you'd have a upright mandolin. I bet that would sound kind of cool. I actually have a mandolin sitting straightly off the stream because it was a gift from my cousin. Oh, hi, Mikey! Welcome. I cannot play well enough to do mandolin theme music, but, you know... But yeah. Oh. Also. I remember last time I brought an Bard NPC in, I brought out my mandolin, and every time they asked him how he performed, did a spell. I would play to mimic him playing the lute. That was a fun one. They ended up teaching the bard how to bard better, which was interesting because none of them were bards. But he kind of learned by being really good at playing the mandolin, by the lute, watching the sorcerer, kind of feeling the vibe of how dancing lights worked, mimicking that on a mandolin, or on the instrument, and then the music kind of manifested as a spell, and then it went from there. And you learned Healing Word by yeah. There you go. Yeah, I don't blame him, honestly. Being eaten by a dragon does not sound fun. Yes. Yes. But yeah, NPCs tend to mention offhand that they have kids. Also, if you want to tug at your player's heartstrings with NPCs, I mean, I'm sure it was quite impressive. I was not there to see it, though, because work boxes don't lift themselves, and freaking I got there late, so there was no one to do the target, and then I had to do the target, but I was, already late, and sorting and stuff. And also the paper, the jam paper was being stupid. It's always stupid, but it was particularly bad. The pallets fall down, so you can't just drag everything out. You have to manually. It's a whole thing. Anyway, what was I gonna? I had a whole thought that I mean, that's a thought. If you say, "Oh yeah, we'll only eat 3 party members," then it eats the bard who made the deal. That is, yeah. You never specify that it wasn't you that I'd eat. That's a thought, actually. Well, here's a question, though, on Black Dragons. The acid, doesn't that kind of degrade the people it eats? Like, does it, like, if it throws someone with acid breath, doesn't that kind of, it kind of melts the skin away, doesn't it? Like, or is it a form of cooking? Like, is that the acid breath a form of cooking things? Like, pre-digesting it a little bit? Ah, that's a thought. Don't breathe on everyone immediately to save some of them undone. Although, dragons are as smart as humans, right? And the difference, one of the main differences between humans and other animals in our world, because occasionally other animals, will do things like use tools or, I mean, parrots can even solve basic math problems. Alligators wear hats, put sticks on their heads to throw off prey, so, they make hats. No, the one main thing that no one else does that humans do is cook food. But dragons are known for cooking food. At least flame dragons are known to roast it before they eat it, right? So, exactly, otters use rocks as tools. Otters use tools, occasionally, but my point on that is, the one thing humans do that no other species does, is cook their food. If dragons, that's why, yeah. So I was thinking maybe acid-breathing dragons acid their food before they eat it as a way of, like, pre-digestion, the way cooking happens. Yeah, that's true. Being the person who teases, is one thing. Being next to the person who is on the hit list is not helpful either. Yeah. Sometimes just being... That is a thing. Yeah, no, if it's over twice your yeah, no, there's no come back from that. That's, well, nope. Yeah, that's true. This is why you don't want to be next to the tank, because you can't, especially if you don't have a lot of hit points. If you can't tank, don't stand next to the tank. Stand behind the tank, but not in the same AoE if you know, and don't clump up in lines if you're fighting something with AoE attacks. Is don't clump up in lines, because then you can all get hit at the same time. Do not clump. But that is whole thing. Oh yeah, no, level 4. I think. No. Okay. Yeah, having low HP and standing next to your tank, when there's a creature that can do AoE, not a good idea. But that is a thought. Interesting. Huh. So chimps will, well, I mean, they are our closest ancestor in terms of thingamabobs. So yeah, but that's one of the big things on humans, which is something worth noting if you world build, which I do, is cooking food. But yeah, do dragons pre-digest their food by using their acid breath? Or fire breath? Well, most dragons use the fire breath. The question is to use the acid breath to do the same thing. Maybe? I don't know. Then of course you get frost breathing dragons, and it's just like, okay. Hey, if they can make fire on their own, so that's not giving them fire, that's just letting them have fire. Oh, but what I wanted to say was, on the subject at hand, which I was gonna try and sort of stick to ish, and all of this, of course, is that if you really want to tug at your players' heartstrings, A, old people who are weirdly nice to them, or B, kids. Kids who are like, oh, hey, you're an adventurer, that's so cool. Your players tend to really like that. It stokes their ego a little bit. Have you ever, like, kids, people are like, oh, have you ever killed a dragon before? Like, having kids ask your player, your PCs, that is a huge thing. Also, if you have older people who tend to like tug at the player's heartstrings, for example, Greta the washerwoman, who everyone now knows her name, which hopefully John remembers because she's gonna be an NPC. They're gonna come back looking for her. The Aired crew on Blue Box is gonna come looking for her. Honestly, but an older woman who has, and she had a son who died. That's really, like, that's how you tug at the heartstrings. Make the players, the NPCs, either young or old, and give them, like, tragedy, and then the players will eat that up and just love it, and they'll come, like old Edna, who I think she volunteered to knit the characters' sweaters if they opened the old library. It had a bunch of giant rats in the basement, so they'd shut down the library. The war mandolin. What, so it has like a spike on the end that you use to bash your enemy's head in, and then you can play a jaunty tune afterward? That would be cool. Or you could give your players a loot of fireball, which means that they can fireball once a day, but only if it gets sunlight. It has to touch sunlight before it gets its charge back. Yeah, so you would have to make a metal, some sort of, what you really need is a Spangaloon for that. That's the kind of instrument you can fight with. It's made of metal anyway, and it has strings, and it has like a little thing on the end that caps a beat. I let my cousin name it because one of the exactly. Or use it to hide behind. If you're going to invite a war weapon, you might as well, a double bass would be a good one, because you can hide behind it, you can use it as a bonk, or you can tap the strings out and play a little tune. You know, any way you want to do it. You just gotta make sure it's made of metal, because if you make any instrument out of wood, it's not gonna... the ones made of wood sound better, but... yeah, you know what? Go for it. Banjo... yeah, because banjos are often made of metal anyway. If you make it out of wood, it sounds better, but if you... will break if you hit someone in the head with it. Which is fine, except then you can't play it. So, you want to have if you want to have a war instrument that you can... both use to hit someone on the head and to play, as opposed to, say, a spell-focused mandolin, which you can play and then also cast like stuff like fireball, or you use to distract your enemies or inspire your allies or whatever, and you're not directly using it as a melee weapon. Then make it out of wood, fine. If you're going to use it as a melee weapon, you have to make it out of metal. That is that's how it goes. Oh, as in it sounds bad. Yeah, a possibility. I mean, I would not want to get decked with the tuba. Just saying. That would, yeah, heavy lead flute could be. Yeah, that's a thought, if it sounds awful and no one wants to play it. But what was I gonna, it is 4 o'clock, and we started just after 2, so it is already longer, and also, Phantom, appreciate the sub. You are awesome, and, it does not, ooh, that's a thought. I need to get my thingy up so that it doesn't get distracted. I have an actual distraction, thing. But my plan, since it's 4 o'clock, is to go raiding. Little Bones is the only one on, unless there's someone else on Twitch you guys want to raid, who is fun and exciting. For those of you not in the Discord yet, let me bring that up. Discord, it has links to fun stuff. Also my Ko-Fi. I don't want to pump you for money, but I do have to pay dental bills and stuff and rent. Let's see. But yeah, if you guys want to join the Discord, there's all sorts of cool stuff, and I promise fun memes, and if you want to keep the random discussion going, always exciting stuff. Relentless Rebels. If you like jewelry, which, I don't know if any of you like jewelry, but, it is a thing. Did I type it in wrong? Yeah, and if you use the code, you can get 20% off that. It's like an official... I have like an official sponsorship deal kind of deal, so that's pretty cool. What else? You guys are awesome. I'm gonna stream tomorrow, around the same time of 2 o'clock. We're gonna do a stream, so look out for that. Probably gonna do a what kind of stream am I doing tomorrow? What kind of stream? The Arcana stream, which is a very fun time. Arcana streams tend to get there. It's a world building race guide book from Sugar Consortium, I think. Tales of Arcana. It's a fun one about the planet Genesis and all of the multitude of creatures that live there, and it's a lot. And there's just some crazy stuff going on, and it's intensive and there's a lot of fun lore. So I tend to do. I picked it up and I tend to do that. Unless anyone has anyone specific, I think we're gonna raid Little Bones, who's playing, I don't know, Satisfactory, some sort of fun video game thing. Little Bones is fun and a friend of the channel and a friend of Jay's. So within the the community, good time, very nice. Yeah. And I will see you guys all on Sunday. If not later, Boom.